Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's H.H. Barnum webinar, Dynamic Innovations in Hybrid Safety Control. My name is Cody Dawson, and before we get started, let me express our sincere hope that you and your families are safe and healthy at this time. We thank you for taking a moment to be with us here today. If we have time afterwards, we'll be answering some questions at the end of today's presentation, but feel free to enter any specific questions you have by using the Zoom Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If we aren't able to answer your question by the end of the session, we'll be sure to follow up personally afterwards. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar will soon be uploaded to the Barnum website for on-demand access. All right, let's dive in. As many of you know, machine safety control can be one of the most frustrating and challenging aspects of industrial automation. Hard-to-wire safety relays and troubleshooting adventures can take up way too much time and money until now. This H.H. Barnum Banner Engineering webinar will cover the SC10 safety controller, a hybrid solution that combines all the capabilities and intelligence of a safety controller and the functionality of two safety relays. Ideal for small to mid-sized machines, this compact, low-cost, easy-to-use hybrid solution is an industry first. And to learn about this awesome safety solution, we welcome Aaron Bigger, Banner's Channel Development Engineer for our Great Lakes region, and John Klesk, Banner's Senior Product Manager for Safety. John, Aaron, let's get started.
Thanks, Cody.
Great, thank you. My name is John Klesk, and I'm the Product Manager for Banner Safety Products. And I want to thank you all for joining this webinar. We have, I have a very, very cool role at Banner. I have the ability to interact with great folks like our partners at Barnum. There's actually a number of you that are on this webinar that I've also done research with to find solutions to help improve the Banner safety offering. Because really our goal at Banner is to develop innovations that can meet your needs, solve unmet needs, and today's innovation, the SC10, is one great example of that. Also, we want to make sure our products are very easy to use and can deliver exceptional customer value. So as Cody mentioned at the beginning, safety relays, they're simple devices, they're cost effective, but they can be very complicated when you come to installations. We have a few pictures here that highlight some of that. So on the top left, you have a couple of safety relays for a two-hand control for an e-stop. With a number of wires that have to be connected to it to make it all work out. The bottom left, it's kind of an interesting, I'm not exactly sure what happened in this example, but seeing a multimeter and a bunch of wires connected in a fashion like this, you'll see this time to time. Wiring can be a challenge when you get to relays. They're just not set up to be as flexible as you typically need. Another example is over here on the right, safety relays. When you get into more complex applications where there's multiple safety inputs like light curtains and two-hand controls and e-stops on bigger cells, you end up having a lot of relays, a lot of wires, making things very complicated and difficult for overall setup. That costs time, and overall that costs everybody money. So as we looked at our safety controller lineup, I started doing some research back in a couple years ago. And this led into the development of the SC10. The Banner is a expandable safety controller called the XS26. This product we introduced about 6 years ago. It's our second generation safety controller. So we had a product before this that we introduced about 12 years ago. We learned a lot with that one, but the XS26 was introduced and it solved a number of needs. And when I went out and did research a few years ago to ask customers how well it's working, and the overall feedback I got on that was they love the fact that we have this free PC software. So you can configure the safety controller with a PC. It's very easy to learn. Typically people can pick this up in a matter of a couple of minutes and very easy to use. And that's a key differentiator. And I'll show you that later today in the webinar. The other thing is that the expandable controller, since you can configure it and you can have up to 154 inputs and 68 outputs, is very flexible for applications like you see down the bottom. So you can have an overall robotic cell with a number of safety inputs, And as a lot of you know, as you get into the design, what you thought you're going to have up front for safety inputs may change. And having a PC programmable product that you can expand inputs and outputs to it very easily really helps in getting machines out the door. And the final thing was, especially in this day and age, having an Industry 4.0 solution where our controllers can speak directly to a PLC, like an Allen Bradley PLC with Ethernet IP, Profinet, and Modbus, so we can provide diagnostics to the PLC to help troubleshooting and also simplify things. We'll go through a few of those examples coming up. So overall, got some great feedback on our expandable controller. But in that research, we also came across a number of machines that weren't using a controller, and this is a great example of one of them. So in this solution, there's a robot that's doing some subassembly, and there's a couple of different machine safeguarding items here. So one thing you want to do is stop the robot when somebody's hand is in place and they're placing a part. And you do that here with a light curtain and a light curtain safety relay. That's relay 1. There's also a need to have an emergency stop of the entire machine. So we're doing that with a e-stop and a second safety relay. In this case, we had asked the question, why not a safety controller? Well, the simple answer is here. So for 2 safe relays, you'll end up with a list price of somewhere between $300 to $500 for the 2 together. An expandable controller, list price is somewhere in the range of $700 to $1,200. So for those simple machines, the cost and complexity didn't always make sense to move into a safety controller. And when you get into typical safety relays, the way they're set up is there's fixed logic. They're designed to work with a specific safety device, meaning there'd be a safety relay for a light curtain, which is going to be different than a relay for an e-stop, which would be different than one for a 2-and control. Because what we do is we bake in the logic into that relay, which makes them really easy to set up, but not very flexible. On the other side of the equation, you have expandable safety controllers. And what we found was we're having a lot of success with machines where they had 4 or more safety relays. And that's where you see a lot of folks using expandable controllers. Because when you get down to it, like you saw in some of those pictures, the number of wires you need, the logic that you're looking for, an expandable controller really makes a ton of sense. So our PC configured logic, 154 inputs compared to single device input, it's just a great solution in those complicated areas. And then, adding industrial Ethernet, Industry 4.0 further makes this solution advantageous. So what we decided to do is fill in that gap with a product called the SC10. And this is a hybrid of a safety controller. So all the great stuff you get over here with PC configured logic, and there's a ton of power in what this PC configured logic can do. And it has 10 inputs. And what's really unique about it, in the same package, we also have 2 independent safety zones. Basically, we built 2 of these relays into this box. So relay output 1 is here, relay output 2 is here, and they're independently controlled. So you can have 10 things hooked up to it and have 2 separate safety zones. And this thing is in Industry 4.0, Industrial Ethernet for Ethernet IP, Profinet, and Modbus TCP. So really unique package. There's nothing else like it on the market. So the SC10 hybrid controller, it comes with free PC software, super easy to use, and you'll see that in a second. I think even this quick demo I give you is probably enough to get you going to create your own safety system. It has 10 inputs, and actually some of those inputs you can even convert into outputs to control lights and do other stuff, so it's really powerful in that sense. And it has safe outputs. So in the safe outputs, we have safety zone 1. This is that first relay output. It's 6 amps, and it has 3 normally open sets of contacts on that first safety zone. The second safety zone is a separate, independently controlled 6 amp relay with 3 normally open sets of contacts. And then we have industrial Ethernet to tie the system in to the overall PLC.
Yeah, John, and I wanted to mention here too, this is Aaron. In my travels, I've seen lots of relatively simple machines, where they've got both e-stop circuits and stop circuits kind of all tied into a single safety module, so a single zone, safety zone, if you will. And the reason they're doing that is for simplicity and for cost factors, but obviously that does, something like this would add some functionality to that equipment without adding a lot of cost. And the second thing to note, a lot of safety modules tend to have 6 amp contacts. Safety controllers, not so much. And that the large capacity of that 6 amp contact allows you to direct drive many contactors and valves that are out there. It gives you that capacity, so you don't need that interposing relay.
Yeah, that's great. A great piece of feedback. Yeah, I mean, you go into a safety controller, typically it's a solid state output and it's only a 1/2 amp. So that's a big difference. You're usually running those solid state outputs to contactors and complicated wiring, so it's very, very, very good point. The other thing that you brought up, so having a single zone, some folks will do that, so that could end up costing more downtime because your e-stop and maybe your light curtain circuit are on the same piece. The other thing is some folks are not achieving the highest level of safety with some of the solutions where this one does. This gives you the highest level of safety with the logic and output side of your safety system. So when you go back to that simple solution or a simple application, what we can do with the SE10 is drop those 2 relays and have a drop-in replacement that fits in the same space. It's the size of 2 traditional safety relays. And to stop that robot temporarily, what we'll do is we'll take the light curtain and connect it into 2 inputs of the SE10. And then in the PC, you'll set up the logic so it controls safety zone 1. And then for the emergency stop, depending on what safety level you're looking for, it's going to be 3 or 4 inputs into the safety controller. So even at the highest level of safety, you still have 4 inputs remaining for other stuff after you do this. But that e-stop will then be connected to safety zone 2. And then with industrial Ethernet, there is a reset button that's here. You can actually have that be changed out, so you can eliminate this reset button and do that virtually from a touchscreen HMI to the SE10 over industrial Ethernet. And also with industrial Ethernet, you have the ability to send diagnostics to the PLC into the HMI, so you can let it know visually that it was a light curtain that's tripped, or it's the e-stop, or there's something else going on in the system, to make really that troubleshooting step much easier.
And that's obviously something that you can't do with a traditional safety module.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Industry 4.0, virtual reset, diagnostics. The only way you can really do that with a traditional relay is a lot of wires, but it doesn't go to the same depth that you get with a safety controller. Kind of pulling all that together with a couple of safety relays and the ability to take out that reset, there's a cost savings of, in the equipment of around $150 per machine. What's not included there, though, is a simplification of wiring. And that can be substantial, both in the cost of wiring, labor, and troubleshooting. Also with the SE10, you're able to configure its logic versus having pre-programmed relays where you'd have multiple relays across multiple machines to satisfy your needs. In this case, you have a configurable safety controller that can really simplify your inventory by having one thing you stock and it gets a configuration as appropriate for its machine. And then Industry 4.0 diagnostics, as Aaron mentioned, really changes the game compared to a traditional relay. So on this next example, this is a little more complicated machine. So there's 6 doors, 2 safety light curtains, and in fact 4 or 5 e-stops. So for this solution, you'd need 4 independent relays. And the reason you need that is you'd have a light curtain connected to one relay. For the other light curtain, you need another relay. The e-stops have their own relay. And the doors also have their own relay. Now in the system, you have 2 safety zones. The first safety zone is controlling the hazard inside the machine. So if a light curtain trips, either of these relays are going to turn that safety zone off, or if a door opens, same situation, it's going to just turn off that hazard. The e-stop is a separate zone where you press that and it'll kill power to the machine. So in the system, the only reason they have 3 different relays is just because that's how relays are set up, and that's how you'd have to use them with different devices. Light curtains get their own dedicated relay, and so do the door switches. They also show a kind of a mess of wires on here, and the reason these devices are individually wired back to the panel is if you look up here in the HMI, they're showing the status of the e-stops and the doors. And what they're doing is they're taking each wire back and pulling the auxiliary wires over to an input card on the PLC. So auxiliary wires for each e-stop go into the IO card here, and then all of the door switches go here, and the PLC can then show the status on the HMI. So with the SE10, what we're able to do is we can do a drop-in replacement that's half the size of what you saw there. So there were 4 relays. Now you have something that's the size of 2 relays, the SE10. It can do all the function that we were talking about there. And also it has industrial Ethernet, so you could eliminate, if there was a reset button here, you could do that virtually and also send diagnostics to the HMI. Now there's one other feature that we just introduced on the SE10 that can eliminate that wiring mess that you just saw me do here on the screen. And we can also drop that input card. And we do that with this new feature called in-series diagnostics. And we're going to be hosting a webinar coming up in the future to talk more about this feature. We're not going to hit that in detail today, but it's a really neat thing, and it's actually embedded into the SE10. So for this application, when you look at replacing the relays and the reset button, there's a substantial savings overall per machine. Again, the wiring here is even more complicated. As you get more and more relays, the wiring gets more challenging and more difficult. So savings is even more than what's shown there for the equipment. And it has all those other advantages we discussed on the other machines, simplifying the inventory, configurable controller. So this could be, those 2 machines that you just saw, you've got one device that could handle both for the same machine builder. It just has a different configuration that's sent to it when it's set up.
And obviously, the more complex the machine, the more complex the troubleshooting task. And so that even makes more sense here now that you've got better diagnostics and simplified wiring to troubleshoot issues that might occur and keep equipment running.
Absolutely. So to go back to that previous slide that I shared on, it was hard on actually either of these applications to get someone to move over to a controller. Maybe on the last one, you could get some folks to convert into an expandable controller. But now with the SE10, we have a product that fits, really the needs of the simple to medium-sized machines with 2 to 4 safety zones. 2 safety zones, but can replace 2 to 4 safety relays at a list price of $450. I mean, it's an exceptional value with what you get with this system. So one other piece of feedback we got when I was doing research on the SE10 was customers that are currently using safety relays, they like the fact that it's a simple mechanical kind of plug and play, connect your wires and away you go. Once you pick the right relay, there's a challenge there, but once you get past that, it's a pretty simple setup. And with a safety controller, they said, hey, I've got to deal with a laptop and get a configuration on a controller. So that's one of the drawbacks. Well, we took that to heart. We spent some time looking into how could we solve that concern. And what we did is we developed this thing called, it's called the XM3. It's a little, kind of like a little thumb drive you'd have for your computer, but this one works for the SE10. And what it has is a backup copy of the configuration. So that's your safety logic, the passwords, because that's critical. You don't want anybody changing the safety configurations. The passwords are on there, and network settings all get stored on this device. Now the SE10 has its own memory. You don't have to have this, but what this allows you to do is, so when you're first building a machine, the control engineer could download the configuration and all that good stuff to this memory stick and put that in inventory. So when the panel builder goes to build the machine, they'll pull an SE10 out of stock, connect it up, grab the appropriate part number for this XM3 with its configuration on it, plug it into the SE10, fire it up, and it's ready to go. There's no need for that control engineer to be pulled off of a project or whatever they're doing that day, haul their laptop out to the panel, build area, connect, and download a configuration. That can all be done by the panel builder. And then the other thing is, you could leave this memory card in the SE10 so that when the machine gets installed and the end user, if they ever have to go and replace it, they can simply take a factory default controller out of the crib, replace it, take this memory stick out of the old one, plug it in the new one, and away you go. So that'll eliminate that call at 3 in the morning from a third shift maintenance worker saying, hey, I got a machine down. I'm trying to configure this thing. Can you help me do it? Well, actually, in this case, it's all mechanical. You take out the old one, put the new one in, and plug in this memory stick. And it's in addition to having, I mentioned network settings, we have a really unique piece here, and you don't see this even on PLCs or a lot of devices that are connected. What we can do with this, the SE10 will ensure that that memory stick always has the latest network setting for that device. So there's no need to go back and set the network setting. So that virtual reset or the diagnostic information is going to be mapped to that new controller as soon as you plug it back in. So it's really a neat feature that helps make that whole process easier across the value chain.
It's also worth noting that this feature's been added to the XS26 and SC26. We've got a couple of flavors of that higher capacity product. Some have a little screen on them and some don't. You needed to have a screen to pull that configuration off the XM card into the controller. But now we've added this factory default kind of configuration where any controller that's in that factory default setting will pull the configuration off the XM card, and you don't need to go through that process of loading it manually.
Absolutely excellent. Yes, and we had some. When we introduced the SE10 last year, we had started just with this feature on it, and we had our plan was to roll it in, but we had a number of customers saying, "Hey, I need that for the XS26 and so the expandable controller and the other products that we have." So like Aaron said, it's available today across all of our products, and it's really a great feature to help solve that need. Now, the other thing I mentioned a few times is our configuration is very easy. And we go back to one of our mantras, and one of the things we want to do is make all this setup really easy to do. And our configuration software, which we'll go through in a second, it's also common across all of our safety controller products, the SE10 through the expandable controller. And it's easy to set up, and I'll demo that in a second. But the other piece that we learned in research was with industrial Ethernet, having the controller talk to the PLC, there's some setup steps that are manual. You have to look up different values and then manually type them in to the PLC to get the tag values to show up in the PLC. So talk to the engineering team. We found a way to be able to export a file that has all the tag values for the information we send to the PLC. So you can use that file, then you import that file into the PLC, and it automatically fills in the tag values for you. So that not only saves you time, but also reduces the potential for errors. And we have that available now for when you connect our controller to an Allen Bradley PLC and also to a Siemens PLC. So it's a real neat feature, and I'll show you how easy it is to create that file. And we even have some videos online that show you kind of the before and after, but overall it's just a super, super simple way to set things up.
And that feature's also been added to the entire product line.
Yes, good point. Yeah, that's across the SC10 all the way to the expandable controller. All right, so I'm going to move into a software demo to show you, what I mentioned, the easy to use software. So with our safety controllers, I just clicked on the software. You select either the expandable controller. Here's our expandable. We actually also have another one that's just like our base unit that's in the expandable product, called the SE26 or the SE10. And what you're going to see here, it's common across all. So for that example that we went through where we have a safety light curtain and an e-stop, I'm going to create that configuration right now. So in here, you add equipment. So I'll simply add a light curtain. And then you can go in and add an e-stop. We default to the highest level of safety configuration. You can adjust that as you would like. In this view, you can drag and drop and create the functions you're looking for. So for an e-stop, it requires a reset. So you can do a wired reset, or I mentioned a number of times here, we have the ability from a touchscreen HMI to do a virtual manual reset. And I'm going to set that up here. So it doesn't require any additional wiring. And then I'll add a latch reset function block. And you simply just go through and connect this stuff together. I'll connect that to safety zone 2, that's down here. So this is that 6 amp independent safety relay output. And then the light curtain is going to go to safety zone 1. And now what I can do is go into simulation mode and make sure that my system does what I want. Because the last thing you want to do is send this down to someone that doesn't work, right? So the light curtain, click it. So once it's in its ready to go state, you see the output goes green. So great, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Now, if I arm the e-stop, you see that the output's still off. That's because it's waiting for that virtual manual reset from the HMI. Boom, did that, now it's running. Then over on the wire diagram, this shows you where to wire each one of the devices. And there's a number of customers that today, they can export this view and drop it into their own drawings. So it shows you where each of the devices get wired to. It can even show you, live mode, what's going on. We have ladder logic if you're wanting to see that view. And then for industrial Ethernet, there's no unique model to buy. We have Modbus TCP, Ethernet IP, or Profinet right on the screen. And you simply select the one you want, click Auto Configure, and then you can export that CSV file. And this will give you all the tag names for the stuff that we send out over industrial Ethernet to the PLC. It puts it in the CSV file for Alan Bradley's Ethernet IP, and then you can import that into the PLC to do all the tag names. It's a real simple setup. There's a configuration summary and all that, but really, I mean, that's how simple the system is to run. I have a system set up and I
think it's worth noting, John, that everything you just showed there, you don't need to be connected to hardware to run that simulation. So that's certainly something that can be tested at a desk as you're running your configuration.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you get the and or the or wrong in your program, you can simulate that at your desk and nobody knows you did that. So it's that's actually a really good point. Yeah, I wasn't connected to a controller, but once you do create a configuration, in this case, I have one set up at my desk. A little different than the one we're using there, but in here I can open and close a door. I can press an e-stop, and it shows me the status in live mode. So it's really a neat way once you do have things set up to see kind of what terminals should do. On the SE10, we also have across all these input terminals, there's LEDs, so you can also see that locally and what's going on with each terminal. So it's really a simple system to visualize and troubleshoot. So that's really as in what we just went through here. It's the same process on a expandable controller. It just has more inputs and expansion cards, but really simple. And our goal is to make it simple, but also still have it be very powerful for what it provides. Now, one other thing that we have, so we have an embedded help menu, and inside of this, it has basically the entire operator manual in it. And one thing we thought was really neat to show you is, as you look at, the way that our system's set up, when you select like an e-stop, for example, we're going to default to the highest level of safety, like a category 4 e-stop. And it'll show you what terminal options you can select. So if you're like, man, I can't remember which one I'd really need, we have a great little cheat sheet that shows you that for different devices. And it's in the manual that's included in our software. Our software is free. It's actually on bannerengineering.com. You can download this today and play around with it. I like to always show this to my kids. My daughter's 8. She can create a safety program like you wouldn't believe. So it's pretty powerful stuff, and a lot there. But that's really most of the time when I show someone that demo, they're like, "Wow, that's pretty much all I need to be able to get going," and they're off to the races. This is just a blown up view of that same thing that shows you that the terminal types for each device and what category level you get. So overall, I mean, the Banner, we offer safety relays. We have a great selection of relays that work well. We have the expandable safety controller that's excellent for for more complicated, larger installations with more than 2 safe zones. But this hybrid safety controller, the SC10, this is just a unique piece that we really feel that the majority of machines with the SC10 and the expandable controller, there's going to be less of a need for these traditional relays. You can create something that's going to allow you to have flexibility across multiple machines with the ability to create your logic with the 10 inputs that it has and the 2 independent safety zones, a $450 list price. I mean, the value is exceptional. Plus it has industrial Ethernet. And then if you have something that's a little more complicated, the same software, only one thing you had to learn, you learned that today, and it works for both. And then I put a little plug in here, kind of a shameless plug on the in-series diagnostic piece. We have also just included this new feature in the SC10 that's gonna make things even more interesting. I mean, where we can go with that, you can add, I think we get up to 100, you get up to 68 total devices you can add to an SC10 with ISD, and there's more that'll come on that. We'll have another webinar to go a little deeper in that, but just a lot of value here, and that's kind of it. Anything else, Aaron, that you'd want to cover?
I think we're good.
Yeah, great stuff, John, Aaron. Thanks for sharing your insight with us today. Before we go, let's take a quick minute to review some questions.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions I think that are appropriate. One was they kind of wanted a feel for what size of equipment the SC10 would be appropriate for. And there's probably a couple different ways you can answer that question. I mean, we say small to mid-size equipment, and that obviously can be kind of relative. The way I like to put it, if you're using safety modules, 2 safety modules is kind of where that price point tends to break even. So if you just need an e-stop module, maybe that might be overkill. But the moment you add gates, light curtains, that kind of thing, the SC10 really starts to make sense. And then having the 2 safety zones, any equipment that can where 2 safety zones can add value, I think is also something to consider moving up from a safety relay to the SC10. And then another question said, how many different part numbers are available on the SC10? And that's an easy one to answer. There is a single part number. So that obviously is going to handle a lot of different applications. We'll handle, make it easy to get, whether it's in your crib, whether it's in Barnum stock or Banner stock. This is a very available product and very easy to specify. And I think that that covers it. We got a couple of other questions. Does the SC10 communicate over Ethernet? Yes. Diagnostics only, not safety outputs. But certainly from diagnostics, there's a lot of information that is available there. We can expand on that offline. The memory stick does plug into the USB port there, and it can stay there to have that backup copy. And then we've got a couple of other questions I think we can answer offline that are a little more in the weeds for this presentation. So. I think that's all I got.
Yep. We'll answer some of the other questions, offline afterwards personally. Thank you, John. Thank you, Aaron, both again. We appreciate it. As you guys have probably guessed by now, we believe Banner's SC10 hybrid safety controller, we believe it's not only dynamic, but it's going to be a game changer in safety. The unit's super easy to use. The software is free. Setup is a breeze. And, with our full lineup of safety gate switches, with light curtains, e-stops, you couple that with the absolute simplicity and the compact design of the SE10, and you and your team can take safety design to a whole new level. One that saves you not only time, but saves you money. Your Barnum salesman can demo the SE10 on site or via virtual demo. These hybrid safety controllers, they're in stock at our Barnum warehouse in Brighton, Michigan, and we've got hundreds more at Banner Engineering in Minneapolis. So give your Barnum salesman a call, ask for the Banner SC10 today. We want to thank everyone for attending, for your continued support of H.H. Barnum and Banner Engineering. Stay tuned for more Barnum webinar topics in the coming weeks. In the meantime, be well and stay safe.